So we're live on Instagram, or where are we live?
Yes,
Yeah,
we will go live on Instagram a bit later than usual.
yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Career Conversations. I'm Meera Jogasundram, and I'd like to wish all of you a very, very happy new year. Thank you for joining us here. And before I introduce our special guest for 2024, I'd like to extend my apologies for the unexplained bouts of silence during the previous Career Conversations session. There seems to be some technical issues with going live on Instagram. Hopefully, we don't face those issues today. So, coming back to our guest today, Billie Savage. Billie is an American national. She has a background of 2 decades working in fitness, rehabilitation, and yoga instruction. Billie started doing activism for animals and for the environment in 2015 and did volunteer work in 7 countries, including the founding of Animal Rebellion, a sister group to Extinction Rebellion in the Netherlands. In 2020, Billie noticed one particular area of animal welfare was very lacking in public attention, that of feral city pigeons. Billie started working as a pigeon rescuer and a rehabber and found Stichting Stadsduivenhulp. Am I pronouncing it right, Billie?
Stichting Stadsduivenhulp. That's Dutch. Yeah,
Yeah.
stichting.
Could
It's a
you
hard.
pronounce it one more time for our viewers?
It's a hard thing to say if you don't speak Dutch. It's stichting, so it has this kind of sound. Stichting Stadsduivenhulp, which means a foundation to help city pigeons.
Excellent. This is a nonprofit based in the Netherlands. Currently, Billie works closely with specialist veterinarians and runs a mini sanctuary for disabled pigeons out of her home. This year, Billie will be moving to Portugal to build a pigeon sanctuary. Billie, I really admire you. Thank you for your service before we begin. Thank you so much. I love pigeons, Billie.
Yeah, I love them too. I think if anybody gets to know them, they will love them.
Yes, I believe that too. Please tell us about your amazing career journey.
Well, I mean, this was not something I planned. It happened in 2020 when there was lockdowns, and because I was always working with people, with groups, within studios, then my work was just suddenly closed down because, of course, that sector was very impacted by the lockdowns in 2020. So I had a lot more time, and I started walking a lot around the city, because I had nowhere to go and I didn't have to hurry. I didn't have to take my bike or the public transport or whatever. And then I just, you start to notice things. And I noticed pigeons that were lying down in pain. I noticed that. And at that time, I really didn't know much about it. When I was in the United States, I think 2018, at an animal welfare, animal rights conference, I had done a small workshop on stringfoot. So I knew what it was, but I wasn't really paying attention to those kind of things. It's one of those things that if you don't know about it, you don't see it because you don't recognize it. And I think also with birds, there's like, I've always been an animal person. I've had cats, but birds are very different. And it takes some education to recognize their body language. Most people, if a bird is in serious trouble, like very sick or about to die, they won't see that anything is wrong, because we're used to, if an animal has pain, that they're screaming or whatever, and birds just go really quiet, and so people don't realize anything's wrong. So I started to see it, and then I tried to rescue a bird, and it was like a huge learning curve because I had to then find assistance with that, and there wasn't really anything in the Netherlands. So I was connecting with groups in Germany that have been doing this for far longer, and they're, I'd say, around 20 years ahead of the Netherlands in terms of awareness about city pigeons and campaigns and associations and sanctuaries and groups and treatments. So At that time, I just connected with some people from Germany, and it kind of went from there. And then I decided that because there was so little help and so little awareness and actually no one doing anything, I thought, well, I should set up a foundation just so that I have a bit more of an official voice, so I can talk to the city council, so we can kind of put this issue on the map. So that was the original motivation for setting up a foundation. So I just went ahead and registered. It was really mostly just to talk to the city council in an official capacity. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. Yeah, and then if I would never have imagined, if you had met me in January 2020, or that I would be now doing nothing but pigeon work. I mean, I would never, it was completely off my radar, but it's just one of those things that once you start, then you see there's such a need. You see that that there is not anyone else doing it, or a lot of stuff that has to be done that hasn't been done, and someone needs to do it, and you get good at it. Like I have now really excellent vets. I have like a lot of skills with string foot, and so that also motivates you to keep going, because it seems like it's something like you have to do it. Like I have no choice. I have to. So it's not easy though. I mean, it's high stress all the time, and always a lot of guilt for all the ones I haven't helped. I mean, I live in a city where there's a lot of pigeons suffering, so I have these kind of existential guilt that I'm not now going out on the street. I'm sure I would find one if I go out now. And like, how do you find a balance in your life when you know that there's this constant need of rescuers everywhere, but at the same time, I have to have some kind of life. I have to look after he wants some attention. Oops. Okay,
He's adorable.
he doesn't want to
He's
say hello.
adorable.
He's been bothering me here, asking for attention. So I feel guilty if I'm out all day.
The pigeons are not afraid of your cat?
Well, they're not in the same space. Like if for any reason they are together in the same space, then I'm supervising. But in general, the pigeons are in their own space, and my cats are in the rest of the house. I have 3 cats. So yeah, so it's just one of those. I think everybody who's in animal rescue or in working in a sanctuary, doing any of these kind of NGO stuff where there's a big need, is very much aware of how difficult it is to set boundaries, how difficult it is to find a balance with the fact the work is actually never done. There's always more need. So yeah, I don't really have any answers for that, but I just keep going and hope that I make a difference for at least the ones that I do help. Yeah.
I'm sure you are. Now, could we just backtrack a little bit? Just a little bit. You are also a yoga teacher and a personal trainer.
Yeah, that's my career. So I started working when I was really young as an aerobics teacher, and then it just like group fitness, and then I became personal trainer, and I always had an interest in the medical side of it, in rehabilitation, like people who have a lot of pain and they're walking like this, and and then using exercise and correcting asymmetries in the body. And so that was my natural interest. I never went into I never became a physiotherapist. I never went into like really medical, but it was kind of where my interest lay. So I did specializations. Eventually, a lot of Pilates. I was working for many years in a classical Pilates studio, where most people who came in were also coming in because they had some kind of problems with their body. And that's where I also really learned to really look at the body, like how it functions, where the disbalances are, where they're coming from. And I think that also, I sometimes think what I do now with the pigeons is very similar, because I'm not a vet. I'm not there doing operations like cutting them open or stitching them up. No, my vet does that. But what I do is I correct these chronic disbalances that they have in their feet that come from strings. And I use a lot of the same way of looking at the body, the same kind of logic that I have been doing in the past very much with my work. So I do feel that there's an overlap, or that they complement each other, or that the reason that I'm so attracted to this is as a natural expression of where I was always interested. But yeah, in the last decade, I moved away from, the kind of the fitness world, and I went into the yoga world. And so I mostly now teach yoga, and mostly private sessions. So that's how I have like a small private business. And I hope that what my dream is to set up a pigeon sanctuary as well, that it's also a yoga center, like a yoga retreat where people can come. They can be with nature and with the animals, and at the same time we have the sanctuary there. So it would be nice to combine those things, because now they're still separate in a way, but I'd like to combine it in the future.
When that happens, Billie, I'll be sure to visit.
You're always welcome. Yeah, of
When that happens,
course. No,
how do
you're.
you, sorry, what are you saying?
No. I said you're always welcome.
Lovely. How do you find a balance between, or no, not between, you have 3 cats, you have
Mhm.
pigeons at
Or
home that
soon.
you're four
Well,
soon.
I'm adopting one from the Middle East. He's blind in both eyes, so we're actually busy with the papers now. So
Oh my.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
you've got loads of pigeons, 3 to 4 cats. You have your yoga private business.
I have no
And
life, if that's what you're asking. I have no other life outside this. I never do anything else. Yeah. No, it's very, very. I would say that's the biggest challenge I have, is I don't there's not I don't really have a lot of balance, and I have a feeling like there's never any really. I don't really ever feel like I can be free, because I'm so aware of there's stuff to, like, I should be doing. Not so much with the yoga. I mean, there's the boundaries. You work, you don't work, and yoga is also not so much um, work, but it's just also a kind of a way of being. So I do teach yoga in order to make a living. So in that sense, that side of it is a kind of commercial thing, but it's not something that you. Yeah, I don't see any. I don't have any conflicts there about it. It's something you are, and you do it when there's an opportunity. I'm certainly not trying to make a career out of being a yoga celebrity or anything like that. I feel that for me anyway, that would damage my yoga, and I don't need to do that. So I just see where the yoga, how it develops, and I think it would develop very beautifully in combination with an animal sanctuary. But with the rescue side, there's a lot of work to be done in order to, for instance, like a veterinarian, they work 9 to 5, and then they go home, and that's it. And in an animal rescue shelter, you have shifts. So you have a shift between, say, like 8 a.m. and 12, and then you're done. Someone else takes over. But the way that I'm doing it now, it feels like I'm 24/7, have to be available in case, and that's unsustainable. So I do hope to, and I'd love to talk to other animal rescuers about how they have, or small sanctuary owners, about how they manage. But I have a feeling everyone struggles with it. It's also very unpredictable. You never know when. So it's not so good for your mental health, I think, in some ways. You have to find a way to deal with it.
How do you how do you overcome these challenges, or how do you plan to overcome these challenges?
Well, I find that being what I've always done, because I have always, for a long time, I also worked as a manager of big fitness studios, and there you have the same element of unpredictability, because you're depending on a team, and the team is very much on a schedule, and you're answerable to the public. So it's like being the manager of a theater production or something. The show must go on, and stuff can happen. Someone can break their leg, and you have to fix it. And so that was, so in a way, what I do, the being always prepared for a disaster, is something I've worked with for a very long time. So it helps to be super prepared for anything. I'm always um you know I'm always aware, okay, something could happen now, and what would I do? So that preparedness needs to be there. You have to know, like, where it's Christmas, everything's closed. Say that a very sick pigeon comes in. What will I do? Let's prepare for that already now. Make sure that I have someone I can call who is a vet. Make sure I have the medicines in the house. Make sure I, have some. They're still doing the fireworks out here. I don't know if you could hear
Oh
that.
dear, that would scare all the animals.
It is. My cat just jumped here because someone just let off a firework in the street. No, but I think it's just about being very prepared for everything and very organized and making sure that you really know where to go. Like, for instance, if I go now traveling, I had to travel within Europe last month, and I will research before I go, where are the bird sanctuaries in this city? Like, I'll look online, like who would be able to help me if I find a bird? Because if otherwise you go there and your eyes are open, you're used to looking around, you'll find a sick bird and you won't know what to do. And then it's a little late to be asking these things. So just taking that level of being aware of what might happen, being prepared for it, trying to have as big a network and as possible. And, that's how I do it. But yeah, it would be nice to have more support systems within the Netherlands. And I think in most countries, the situation with pigeons is really dire. Not enough support, not enough systemic solutions. But it can be better. And in some countries, in some cities, it is very good. There are a few examples of cities where it's really, really good. So it is possible, change is possible, but there needs to come a lot of, there needs to be much more people campaigning for it, awareness. So I think raising awareness is one of the most important things when it comes to animal welfare, because it starts with the fact that most people don't even know there's a problem. So yeah, how can it change then? So yeah.
How do you think awareness can be raised?
Well, I think, of course, nowadays we do a lot online. So getting people talking about things, getting big organizations to make a campaign. For instance, PETA made a campaign about pigeons. They're not here in the Netherlands, but I think in the United States. And they had big posters where they were calling them sky puppies. So instead, because people always say flying rats, so they changed it to sky puppies. And that kind of thing, where a big organization just runs a campaign. It would be also like what we try to do here in the Netherlands is to get the existing organizations, because there's a lot of really excellent bird shelters and rescue state-funded wildlife hospitals and stuff here. But what they're really focused on is real wildlife. So pigeons don't really have that status. They're not really wildlife, and they don't have official pet status. So they've been left off the picture. Like if you look on their website, you won't even see a photo of a pigeon there. Many of them do treat pigeons, but because they actually have very different character and very different needs than wildlife, then they're sort of being shortchanged, because a lot of the stuff that they do doesn't really apply to pigeons, or the way that they're taught to do things, the way the structure is set up, it doesn't really apply to pigeons. So what we need is for all these institutions to have a separate campaign that is specifically focused on pigeons, and that will help with raising awareness and changing the situation. But I think we can also very much look to Germany as an example of what they've done. In the last 20 years, 2 decades, many cities have associations that are supported by vets, that are connected to sanctuaries, and they've done a really good job with raising awareness and just getting the topic on the map in terms of a conversation, political pressure, a big effort to change the legal status of pigeons from having no status to being officially pets. And that would change a lot of things. I think you really need to have it from all sides, and to build coalitions. For instance, there needs to be coalitions between people who are very interested in pigeon welfare, between those people and people who hate pigeons and just don't want them on the street, because there's an overlap. Like, I don't want them on the street either. So you need to then find common ground and then find a solution which is better for pigeons. Yeah.
In your experience, what kinds of misinformation have you come across about pigeons?
Well, I always tell this story about how people say flying rats, I don't, I don't have the book to hand, but there's this
I
nice
don't
book.
like that term. I
No,
really don't like that term.
no, but uh, it started in the 1960s, actually in New York. There was I think, a park commissioner or someone in charge of the park maintenance who really didn't like pigeons, and he wanted to have them out of the park. And apparently, he called them flying rats. And he also spread a lot of misinformation about that they were spreading diseases. I think I don't know the exact details anymore. I'd have to look it up, but I think there was some respiratory illness that was that some people got at that time, and he tried to put the blame on pigeons, and later that was proved false. But the problem is that those kind of things stick, especially if they've been in the media, and people love like a catchy term like that. And then what happened is that in the Woody Allen film Stardust Memories in 1980, he used the term flying rats, and after that it just became a meme. And everyone just, and here people also say it, and I'm like, why are you saying something that Woody Allen said? Like, this is Netherlands. They tell their children that, and then their children say it, and that's just how it goes. And I think that every time someone says that, we should correct them. So I was like, every time someone says flying rat, you should say, no, sky puppies. Because these kind of memes, they take on a life of their own, but they can also quickly die. So I think it's time that that is just dead, the flying rats thing. And we should do, we can all make an effort to just, like say, this is just completely silly that you repeat this, and it's something from the 1980s, like, put it in the bin with the leg warmers and the whatever. So I think that those kind of things, it's just people repeat it, without really knowing anything about it. And what I find here a lot of times, actually, it was just recently, I put on Facebook a post about a poor pigeon that around Christmas died on the street. She was lying right on the street where all the people walking by, and must have been thousands of people walking by, and nobody helped her, and she was just lying in the corner. And then someone sent a photo, and I didn't know the pigeon was dead. I thought maybe alive, so I went there and I found her. She was dead. And then I put this on Facebook, and someone said, I would not pick up this pigeon because they probably have bird flu. So this thing about bird flu is also one of the biggest myths, and it causes people not to help pigeons because they think, oh, I'm going to get bird flu. So I can tell you that pigeons don't get sick with bird flu, city pigeons. They've done a scientific test. You can actually inject the virus into them and they don't get sick. They're resistant to it. So if you find a sick pigeon, it's not going to be bird flu. What it usually is some kind of complication of a parasite in their gut or a parasite in the throat. It might be an accident. It might be respiratory sickness, that they get but all of these things, you don't catch them as a human being. They pass between pigeons, and very often it's just a complication of starvation. Like, since I started doing this in 2020, I've literally rescued thousands of pigeons. And so by now, when someone says, oh, there's a pigeon lying on the street, I know what it's going to be. I know that they're going to have eaten something bad. So they're like, I have one now that I just picked up at New Year who has infection in their crop. Probably comes from eating cake and chips and, bad food. And they can't really handle this very well. And then the bacteria gets in there and they get weak. They can't fly anymore. So they will usually have some type of parasite in their gut, but these are not things that you catch from them, So this thing about pigeons having bird flu or pigeons spreading diseases is completely untrue. And people also say pigeons are dirty. So they're stray animals. I mean, if you look anywhere where there's stray cats, like we know that cats are the cleanest animals. They're always cleaning each other. A white cat who lives, and who's cared for is going to be sparkling white. But if they're living on the street and they have to sleep under cars and they have no shelter and they're getting in the mud, they can't keep themselves as clean as they want. And pigeons are stray animals. As soon as, I bring them in from the street, they're all dirty with their mud on their feet. And, after they're a few weeks, their feathers are shining, they're spotless because they love to take baths. And so you can't really then blame them for having mud on their feet if they're stray animals. They're not dirty animals. They're super clean birds, and they will take baths every day if you let them. So I let the pigeons have a bath a couple of times a week. I put water there, and they right away rush to the bath. So yeah, that they have bird flu, that they spread diseases, that they're dirty. These are the things you always hear. And I was shocked that even people who love animals say that. For instance, I've done a lot with animal rights. Did a lot with organizing animal rights demonstrations and stuff. And I've heard people even who are like animal rights activists saying, "Oh, might get a disease from them," or something like that. So it just runs really deep. People have heard that. They've never questioned it. They just have this association in their mind. It's a kind of discrimination, it's a kind of embedded discrimination. And those kind of things are the hardest to combat because people don't even realize that they're discriminating. They just think, oh, that's how it is. And so you got to get people to question those things, and then question like that they said that, like, why would somebody who loves animals and is demonstrating for animals, they see a sick pigeon, they're like, oh, maybe we're going to catch something from this pigeon. They should stop and think, why do I say that? Like, what is that based on? So yeah.
I came across a website. They had the drawing of a pigeon, and they named the parasite or the virus that can be found in every part of the pigeon's body. I was shocked, and I was wondering, I'm a layperson, I'm wondering, I mean, seriously, are you telling me that other animals, the pets that people have, they have no parasites in their body and on their
Oh, it was
skin, on their
medical.
fur?
It was a medical drawing, or what?
It's not a medical drawing, it's a pest control website.
Okay, well, pest control, this is a thing. Pest control make millions out of convincing everybody that pigeons are, it's in their advantage to say that
Absolutely.
they're very dangerous. So that's a big problem. And they will explore every angle they can to try to make people, it's actually quite dishonest. Like, I can take a photo of a pigeon. I'll say, well, they could have this parasite in their throat. They could have this virus. They could have this, like any animal. Like a human can also, in theory, you can have whatever, tuberculosis, HIV, da 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 da. You can have all those things. You can have fungus in your toenails. You can have herpes in here.
Any animal can have
Any animal
this.
can get all this.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And we all have our own diseases that affect us. So it's very dishonest they do that. I mean, they could also put a dog there, same thing. But they do that because they make a lot of money out of, this is their income, by making themselves available. So I think there should be some legal challenge to that. It's really difficult to know what to do. I mean, these are commercial companies that make money out of killing pigeons, and they've also played their part to convince the public that it's a problem and that they're dangerous. But that's why we really need other organizations. I'm actually quite disappointed that I never hear anything coming from wildlife shelters. From here in the Netherlands, we have the animal protection. They call it dierenbescherming. That's kind of a big state-funded organization that's supposed to protect animals. I never heard a single word from them to combat this. And they need to start doing it, because we have a big problem in the Netherlands, actually worldwide, but in the Netherlands, with pigeon torture. There's been several incidences of people cutting off the wings of pigeons with scissors and then dumping them on the
Oh
road.
my goodness.
Even in Amsterdam, in our main square, I was just there a few days ago, and people who are often on the square because they sell things to tourists, they told me stories about how people would just come there and kick a pigeon so that they're terribly wounded,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
stomp on them. And, they call the police. The other police doesn't do anything. But there's a lot of pigeon abuse going on, and and we only hear the tip of the iceberg, because pigeons are they can't fight back, they can't bite, they can't scratch, they're easy to catch, they're about the most weakest, mildest animal. Even a kitten can bite and scratch you. Like, a pigeon cannot do anything. So, I mean, I rescued a kitten when I was in Turkey in 2019, and this was a young kitten. She was not even 6 months old. She gave me such a bite. I mean, it was sore for months. And so I was thinking, like a kitten, they can scratch you. And we think of that as a really helpless animal. A pigeon They can't do anything. They're completely helpless. So yeah, people take advantage of that to abuse them. And I think that really, I feel like when there's animal welfare organizations that have a platform, they have the authority, when they say something, people listen, that they're actually morally obligated to counter this information that is coming from pest control. And I honestly, I don't know why they do it. I don't know if it's an oversight or if there are more sinister reasons, or if it's just simply general ignorance. The fact that pigeons are kind of invisible. They're not even on the map in terms of people thinking, including them. Like, I see all these posts now from all the animal organizations saying how terrible fireworks are for animals. Cats, dogs, I saw this list, cats, dogs, yeah, the hedgehogs, whatever. But they don't mention pigeons at all. And
I
pigeons
wonder
are
why.
in the city. Pigeons are in the city. They live right in the places that people are putting, like a hedgehog is not likely to be on our main square, but the pigeons are right there where and birds in general suffer. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I think birds in general have less understanding and support from the public because they're very different than us. I would say birds, and then of course fish even more. Most people don't even think about fish as sentient beings. What they are, but they don't even include them in their circle of compassion. But birds are like one step, because they're very different than us, and more different than other mammals. And yeah, so I feel they get a kind of left out of the conversation, and pigeons even more, because they're so ubiquitous, and people will notice a swan or something, and they're seen as wildlife, and some endangered birds, but because pigeons are everywhere, people just don't even think about them anymore. They're sort of part of the furniture of the city. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of work to be done. And people often ask me, how can we help? And most people are very focused on, like, we want to catch pigeons and we want to, treat them. But that's not really where the work is. The work, I mean, that's just cleaning up the results. What the work really needs to be done with campaigns, political campaigns, legal campaigns, public awareness campaigns. That would make the biggest difference at this point. So those are the kind of people that need to get involved, as people with campaigning experience, people with platforms, existing platforms, anybody who's already has a huge animal rights. Like, we have animal rights organizations that are very established here in the Netherlands. They don't have pigeons on their as part of their campaign at all. And if they were to start including that, then that would make a huge difference.
That's very discriminatory.
It is. It is. There's discrimination. I mean, that's also one of the things that people say, yeah, but they're not indigenous animals, But the reason that they are not indigenous here to the Netherlands originally is because humans brought them here, and so it doesn't really make any sense. You can't put them in that category as invasive species or something, because they're not. They're stray domesticated animals. It's like saying a dog is an invasive species. We're not going to do that anymore, because we accept that we have manipulated dogs and made them part of our life for so many thousands of years that you can't turn back the clock. And it's the same with pigeons. You can't turn back the clock, and they don't have anything in common with their ancient wild ancestors anymore. So yeah. But that's the thing. Most people don't even realize that. They think that they're wildlife. And that's the problem, because certain pigeon species are wildlife. For instance, wood pigeons or a certain dove species, they are wildlife, and they don't live in the city that much. They have their habitat. Of course, with all animals now, we see more and more of them having to live in urban or semi-urban environments, or because there's no nature anymore, because their habitats are destroyed, they start to encroach in the city, and then you get problems. But for them, it's a problem. They don't have enough food anymore. So many wild bird species have suffered because all the insects are dead or being poisoned, so they don't have any food anymore. So we have like the collapse of the swallow populations, this kind of thing. So yeah, that's another discussion. But yeah, I think you can't compare a city pigeon to a wild species pigeon, because the wild, I don't really like to use the word wild. I think it's also a bit discriminating, so free living or, you know, non-manipulated. But their instincts are still natural, and they have a relationship with their environment which is undisturbed. You know, for instance, I like to compare it with wolves. So a wolf and a dog, they're this, in theory, a dog comes from wolves, or they're related. But when a wolf is living in a forest, they are in balance with their environment. They can survive, they can reach a good age. I mean, they can get, you know, they can enjoy their natural lifespan. They can stay healthy. So, but a dog, all of that has been destroyed. If you go put them in a forest, they have nothing. They cannot remember how it is to live in balance with their environment anymore. So all they know is we got to be around people. We got to find a garbage can, or we have to find someone who can be our new owner or whatever. And you cannot turn back the clock and turn them into a wolf anymore. It's just not possible. I think so it's the same with pigeons and maybe wild bird species, or even wild pigeon species. But I mean, on the other side of the argument, then we have, you know, wolves now, how do they survive? There's no forest anymore. They're being shot everywhere. There are no mountain lions that keep the ecology in balance. You have the big predators. You have the not mountain lions, but, you know, the big cats, and you have the wolves. And so the whole thing is kind of messed up by the fact that the environment is so
Messed up by humans, might I
exactly.
add.
So then even the wolves start to have problems because they don't have any more the natural relationship with but that's a different discussion. But at least their instincts are still there, or their deep knowledge. Maybe not, you know, you have a certain ability to survive that comes from a deep knowledge from your ancestors, from your relationship with the environment, and that can get destroyed if it's, you know, if there's too much human interference and manipulation.
We have a lovely viewer who has given you a compliment. I'll read it out to you.
Okay.
I love the work. It's from Trisha Tasuda Kovash from LinkedIn. I love the work you're doing, Billie. Thank you, Mira, for facilitating this wonderful lady today. She's got to run for yoga class. So that's a very encouraging comment.
Nice.
Now,
Yeah.
Billie, I'm learning so much listening to you. How should one respond when they see a pigeon that's possibly unwell or injured?
Well, in general, if they cannot fly, then one should get them into safety. So one should then actually pick them up, put them in a box or a bag, or wrap them up in a shawl or whatever, and take them indoors where they're not going to be run over by traffic or eaten by a predator. And then what you do after that really also depends on your country. In this country, we have an animal ambulance, which in many parts of the country will, if you call them, they will come and pick up the pigeon and bring them to a shelter. Most countries have support Facebook groups and rehabbers, people who take care of sick pigeons.
What
So
about countries where there are laws against pigeons?
what kind of laws?
Not feeding them, not supposed to feed them,
Yeah, we have that
for
here as
example.
well. Yeah, there's a feeding ban here as well. It doesn't apply to one's own garden or one's own house. Um, they don't enforce it very much either. People just feed them anyway. It's supposed to be a sort of way to keep the population down, but it doesn't work. And that's been demonstrated again and again. But they don't want people love to feed birds, and they don't want them to do that. So yeah, I think in those cases, don't feed them in places where people are going to get angry at you and where you're going to get a fine. You know, I mean, you can feed them on your own balcony as long as your neighbors are not complaining. You can feed them in your own garden. You can feed them when no one's looking. Do be aware that feeding pigeons in places where, for instance, it's the same with dogs. If you feed them at a certain place, they're going to hang around there because they're going to think, oh, you know, I'm going to be fed. So if you feed a pigeon right in front of a shop where you know the person is hostile to pigeons, then you're not really doing them any favors, because they'll hang around there and then the shop owner will get angry. Maybe he'll call pest control. So try to feed them in places where you're not going to engender a conflict with the population, which might be to their detriment ultimately. So yeah, I think that within Europe we have there are laws that say you have to help an animal, and you should not, an animal shouldn't be have to suffer unnecessarily. So there are sort of global EU animal protection. So a sick here, in theory, if you see a wounded or sick animal on the street, you actually have a duty to act. I mean, that obviously no one's ever going to prosecute you if you didn't or know or notice, and pigeons, like, nobody cares. But there are these kind of laws. So I don't think there's any law against helping them, but it will really depend on what country you are, what to do after the pigeon is safe. But it's not a good idea to leave them on the street at all, because they are so vulnerable. And for instance, we have this, to illustrate, we had this photo of somebody that saw a young pigeon on the street with a wound. And this photo was sent to the rescuer. She arrived there 28 minutes later, like rushing over there, and the pigeon had already been run over by a car. And it was,
Oh my.
and it happens so fast, because when they're young or wounded, and the same applies to pigeons that come out of the nest too early, which happens a lot, they should also be taken into safety. Any pigeon that can't fly should be taken into safety. And then, for instance, yeah, just last night, I think it was, someone found a pigeon in Milan, Italy, and she was on their Instagram, like, what am I going to do? So I put it on the Instagram stories, and right away got all this information. Yeah, this person, this organization, this number you can call. So the support is there, and I'm going to actually try to make a kind of database of every country or city you're in, what you can do. But yeah, I always tell people, if you really for some reason don't want to, some people do have bird phobia. I know people who are so afraid of birds they really can't touch them. So yeah, in that case, if possible, at least try to stay with them and call someone who doesn't have the phobia to come and pick them up. Because if you just leave them there, not only do they die, but they usually have really a very nasty death. And yeah, if they can't fly, they're just too vulnerable. Leaving them there is kind of not an option, I think. Yeah.
Certainly not. Now, from what you have told me, Billie, it seems to be an emotional roller coaster ride, this rescue work you're doing. I mean, how do you keep going without, you know,
Burning
being
out.
emotionally drained and, being
Yeah.
upset?
No, I am often those things. I think, yeah, that's what I was trying to bring across right in the beginning of our conversation, is that is the biggest challenge. And I don't really, at this moment, I think the yoga helps me with that. Like, I try to meditate, I try to be very self-aware, but it is very, very difficult to deal with that. And especially to feel so responsible, to feel like if I don't do it, nobody will do it. And if I don't go out, then there's a pigeon out there probably lying on the street. Like, for the last 2 nights I've been out, because it's Christmas, it's New Year, it's it's bad weather, and we had the fireworks. So I've been out yesterday evening and the day before, just kind of wandering on the street. But it's not sustainable. I can't do that all the time. I have a lot of animals here that I need to take care of. And if I do go out, then I come home. Usually at that moment, somebody calls and says, oh, here's a pigeon. And so it's just not possible for me to be like walking the streets 24/7 looking for pigeons. I have to use my time well, because it's better to have like more like a targeted, like I'm going to go after pigeons that there's already alert about, that I know there's a pigeon there, than just in case I find one. So it's just, where do you draw the line? Like, I think you have to just find agree on some structure. I'm going to do it this way, and realize that it's never going to be enough. You can't save them all. Like, I think that when you say to yourself, I have to save all the pigeons, that's when you give yourself a huge amount of stress, because it's a mammoth task. And we're only talking about the pigeons in Amsterdam. In all the other cities in the Netherlands, I
What
do help
about the other
I do help them.
countries? You're
All
talking
of
about
the
just
other
one
countries.
country with so
I
many other
know.
countries.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I do help a lot of pigeons from other cities. I have pigeons from Rotterdam, pigeons from, especially ones that other people catch and then they deliver them to me. Um, but it's just such an overwhelming. So yeah, I think it's a combination of just being structured with one's time and being as efficient as possible. So whatever you do, and this applies whatever you do, just try to be the most effective with your time that you can. It's so easy to waste the time that you have on things that don't deliver. So like the Pareto principle, all this kind of thing, they're all applicable. So try very hard to use your time in a way that is going to make the most impact and not that's also a little bit my problem with social media. Social media, when I use the social media, particularly to raise awareness, because when I started with this, I realized that probably one of the most important things we need to do is raise awareness about pigeons. But it takes a lot of time. And that time I could be out there looking for pigeons. So I try to minimize it. I post stories. I post about once a week. I post a post, and I try to do one that is going to be informative. Um, yeah, but like with those kind of things, you just make a decision in advance. Okay, I've decided that I'm going to spend this much time doing this on social media, and I'm going to spend this much time going out on the street, and I'm going to spend this, and really think about if it's a good use of your time, how and then also try to keep one's mental, try to be as self-aware and not get involved in things that take a lot of energy and don't really deliver results. Like I don't get involved in any interpersonal dramas with other pigeon rescuers, which is something that happens a lot in the pigeon rescue world, or I think in any
Oh,
animal welfare world. Any animal welfare or animal rights is often full of all kinds of conflicts between different groups. So I have like zero energy for that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's a combination of planning and being self-aware and being realistic, trying to get a good overview of what's needed.
you are a very resilient lady, very resilient. And I really admire you. I know I've said this already, but I really admire you.
Oh, thanks, Mira.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for being there for the helpless and the voiceless and the ones who are most discriminated against.
That's true. Yeah.
Like they are non-existent, they are all over, they are
Yeah.
everywhere, and
Yeah.
yet they don't exist.
Exactly. They're invisible. But that's what we have to make them more. We have to make them visible. We have to give them, a platform and a voice as much as we can. And I think that that's also one of the most rewarding things. Of course, we live in a world where there's just so many issues and so many,
Misconceptions.
yeah, so many, everywhere, animals, humans, everybody, needs help or needs some assistance. And um, I think that, trying to help those that really don't have any other voice or are being ignored even by other animal groups. It's not to say that their need is greater than anyone else's, just to try to balance it so that that everyone has some type of voice for them. So that's a little bit also why I feel that I really want to focus on pigeons now. Is not to say that other animals or humans or children don't need also all the help they can get. And I also, I'm also rescue other animals and I donate to human rights organizations. And but we only have one life. We only have 24 hours. So I also try always to stick up for the underdog and for the ones that maybe no one else is speaking for, just to try to keep it all as try to make the biggest difference I can. And I do feel also in general, I tend to feel particularly bad for those who do not get any attention when they have also problems. And that's not only with animals, but also, for instance, the human rights, certain countries that never get any media attention, even though they also have famines. And, I feel, why is, it feels unjust that so I always have a tendency to instinctively want to speak up for them. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, admirable. I love it. I think the pigeons, even though they can't tell you, I know they are very grateful to you. Really.
Yeah, well,
Gosh,
I
gosh,
don't
it's
know.
a
I think when
great.
I catch them, they don't like me at that moment, but hopefully they're happy afterwards. So yeah, that's what.
I'm sure they love you, Billie, for all that you do. And I mean, just listening to what you have to go through, the challenges, the misinformation that's being spread, the obstacles you have to overcome, and you are trying to help living things, living beings, living sentient beings who are, as you said, completely invisible, completely disregarded,
Mm.
except for pigeon lovers.
Yeah, I do find it rather strange though, because on the other hand, it is just it's not actually that straightforward. There's a strange kind of cognitive dissonance or discrepancy. For instance, pigeon racing is very, very huge. Here in the Netherlands and in Belgium, it's an enormous industry. There's about like 800,000 new pigeons being bred every year, and they are making huge amounts of money from the
Because
sport.
it profits humans, you see, as long as it profits humans,
But the
then
pigeons
it's
are commercially valuable. Like the pigeons that they buy them. The Netherlands racing champion is something like worth 2 million euros, and there's it's so this is the same animal. This is exactly the same animal as the one that's on the street. And then of course we have pet pigeons who are you fancy pigeons who are in people's homes being treated like their baby. um, they are pigeons being bred for the table. Even in the Netherlands, we have some company who's producing pigeons for people to buy to eat. So there's
okay.
all these different areas where it's all the same animal. It's very confusing because it doesn't really, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense. And of course, here in Amsterdam, one in the center of Amsterdam, the pigeons are in particularly bad condition. They're very often injured. They're starving. They're it's just really, it's not, once you know about pigeon welfare, it's really hard to look. It's hard to walk around the center of Amsterdam. You see so many pigeons in a bad state. But the tourists love to come to the square and get a photo with the pigeons eating from their hand or something. They love it. So I'm thinking, is this the same animal that they're saying is dirty and all that? Because
Exactly.
everyone wants to come and have a photo, their Amsterdam photo with pigeons on their head or whatever. So there seems to be no logic to it at all. There's no, sometimes they love them, sometimes they don't like them, so it is very strange. I find it frustrating sometimes. I don't understand. I think it's just one of those things that as humans, we don't make sense a lot of times. People just don't think logically and are not consistent in their behaviors and attitudes. And all we can do is try to raise awareness, to spread the facts, to get the systems in place to protect them. And that's how things change. And the same people who now hate pigeons, if we changed the system and we had a really good pigeon management and they were not on the streets anymore, those people would probably like pigeons. They wouldn't notice that they'd gone through any kind of change, but they just go with whatever the culture is presenting them. So these are the people who say, oh yeah, flying rats, because that's what their parents said. So I think that it's about changing the culture as well. Yeah.
I think, like what you said, it comes from top down,
Yeah, both maybe, because at the same
bottom
time,
up
you
and
need the
top down.
bottom up to influence the top down. So, um, I mean, I think that it would be great to team up with someone who has studied public political campaigning. There must be all kinds of areas of social engineering. So social engineering, this kind of people who have studied those areas to discuss how can we change things for pigeons. Because right now, what we've been doing, and what I think is the problem that a lot of animal advocates do, is just like complaining, yeah, you treat animals so badly and look how pathetic they are. And look, that doesn't work. It really doesn't work to change anything, because you also talk to an echo chamber. You post a miserable picture of a pigeon and other people who care about pigeons say, oh, that's terrible. But you're not reaching the awareness of the people that you need to reach, which are the policymakers and stuff. So I think what's needed in many countries have tried to change some social problem with social engineering. and there are ways to do it. And I would say that it would be great if we could apply those principles to pigeon management, because it's a public awareness problem and a systemic problem in terms of no facilities for them, um, and an animal welfare problem. So there's so many things that overlap, and there's all the commercial interests as well, because we live in a country that is breeding 800,000 new pigeons every year, and then a country that's saying there are too many pigeons on the streets. And of course, most of those pigeons don't end up on the streets, but a lot of them do. And it just takes a few to then keep breeding. And so, yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
What's your vision for pigeon rescue in the near and far future?
Well, I would like to structure it more in the future from a facility, because once you have a facility, for instance, I work out of my home now, so that's severely limiting in the terms of people who want to come and learn from me. I don't really have any place to say, okay, you can come between 9 and 5 and do this. So a facility, and then I would like to write a book about stringfoot and maybe about pigeons in general. I'd like to structure my foundation a bit more in a traditional way. So until recently, it was more just me trying to raise awareness and trying to stimulate people to work independently to some extent where I would support them. But I'd rather have people actually working within the foundation with me. I think that would be more effective. And so I would say, yeah, structuring the foundation better, using time and energy on things that are going to make a long-term difference. Right now, it's in Dutch, we have this saying, I think they say, dweilen met de kraan open. That means in Dutch, mopping up while the tap is still running. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm mopping up all the hurt pigeons, but there's always more because the tap is running. So, and of course, I'm going to open my sanctuary. So I'm going to move, buy a farmhouse, open a sanctuary. So that's going to be a huge change. Exactly how that's going to work with still rescuing Dutch street pigeons, I don't know, but we'll see when the time comes.
Very inspiring vision. Very inspiring. Tell us more about why you have chosen to move to Portugal.
Well, I want to buy some land for a sanctuary, and as an American, it makes the most sense for me to live in Portugal in terms of visa, in terms of how easy it is to live there. I've been in Netherlands for my whole adult life, but the Netherlands has many more regulations around creating a sanctuary. Land is way more expensive and way more scarce. It's harder to buy land and then be able to use it for what you want. And I also really want to have a bit of wild land I can also use for the yoga retreat. So it made sense. And I've wanted to move for a long time. I mean, I've never planned to live in the Netherlands my whole life. So it made sense to just say, okay, I'm going to move. I'm going to get this land somewhere else. So yeah, that's how because I had to make a decision to buy it somewhere, and didn't seem to be any reason to do it here other than the fact that my foundation is based here. But animal rescue you can do everywhere, and I'm sure there's many pigeons in Portugal that need help too. So from a practical point of view, it made sense, yeah, to do that. And otherwise to move back to the States, but that's way bigger move, and I feel that I've become quite European after all these years of living in Europe. So being in Portugal is kind of the next best thing in terms of ease of living for an American national. Yeah, and I think that there's also the possibility to have a much bigger sanctuary there than here. Yeah.
I'm still trying to process all the things that I've heard from you, and I find myself in unfamiliar territory. Like I need to detox after our session, not because of you, but because of the plight of these pigeons, not only where you stay, but all over.
Yeah.
It's very disturbing. very disturbing.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that in some countries they don't have such a problem with public image. I do feel in some places they're more valued. They're not. They don't talk about them as flying rats. In other countries, it's worse. I think I hear a lot of reports from rescuers in China where it's particularly bad, and the animal protection laws are not protecting them at all. So I think it's different per country. Um, but yeah, it is. I think just in general, animal suffering is overwhelming. Once your eyes are open to it, then you see it everywhere, and you feel it's just such a huge problem, and it's very difficult as an empathetic person to find a way to deal with it. I for the last 5, 6 years, I've not been able to go anywhere, travel anywhere that I didn't come away with a new adopted animal, or had to take some to even just a week in Greece. And I always was struggling with 2 cats that were really about to die if they didn't get vet care, and another pigeon that I found in Athens that was also just almost dying and searching for a vet. And you can't go anywhere without seeing these things. It's very difficult to know what to do because there's a lot of need and not enough support. Yeah, it's a difficult world that we live in. So then we get into the big discussion of, okay, we're on this, we've been given a life, we're very privileged, like me and you, we're safe, we have the means to live, so in a way we're kind of obligated to do what we can, I think, to help those that are in need, and that also gives one's life more meaning, I think. And you cannot think a life that has been spent trying to help those that need help is a life well spent, no matter what. You cannot have regrets about having spent your time doing that. So,
does your foundation, I mean, if someone wants to donate to your foundation, how do they go about it?
well, I have a link tree on social media.
All the links that you have already given,
There's
included
a
in the
link.
description attached to
Yeah,
this.
there's a link tree, and when I move to Portugal, then I'm going to set up a more traditional structure where people can also donate via the website and all that kind of thing. But right now, because I'm not exactly sure how we're going to move whether the foundation is going to stay here or move to Portugal, so I will look into that. I'm going to look into that as part of the process in the next months or so. But right now, people can donate, or they can just like cover a vet bill if they want via the link tree, or they can sponsor a pigeon if they want. So that kind of thing.
What's your definition of owning your career, Billie?
Owning your career. I think that one should try to be as true to oneself and not try to copy others, because that doesn't really work. And I think that in terms of career, then I would look into more my career as a sports instructor, I think, rather than because the foundation is volunteer work. It's not. I wouldn't describe it as a career as such. With a career, you think that it's about growing uh, uh, in terms of your own earning potential, or your in hierarchy and this kind of thing. So in my area about sports and fitness, then it was very much within the framework of becoming a celebrity trainer. Then someone say, well, then you've really advanced your career if your clients are movie stars or whatever. But I think that the people I've seen who were the strongest in my field were people who really developed their own unique potential, whatever that was, and often in specializations. So to follow their own passion and to develop that to the highest quality. So to do something really well that you're really interested in, rather than trying to fit yourself into what someone else is doing. And even if it seems less glamorous, like I remember one of my colleagues was only focused on certain issues with the back, only. But he was so passionate about that and became so specialized in that, that, you know, that was his strength as well. And I think that it's really important just to be as true to oneself as possible. And when you are very passionate about something, you will always excel, because passion is the most important thing. That when you're authentically very passionate about what you're doing and very interested in it, that's when you are connecting to your highest expression. So I would say people shouldn't try to copy others and shouldn't decide exactly what their path is based on whatever is considered popular or anything like that, because no matter how much they put on a mask or try to be like others, or they will never be as strong as when they're doing what they're passionate about.
You know, I know you classified your work for the pigeons as volunteer work, and you have categorized it as not career. But honestly, Billie, from where I am and the way I look at things, I think that is very much a very large part of your career. I mean, your whole life is dedicated to it. All your time is
Yeah,
dedicated to
that's
it.
true. Yeah, I guess it depends how you define career. I always thought about career more as a sense that you have a career and then you finish it. So it's very much within the framework of earning a living. So people will have a career in, whatever, management, and then they retire and they don't have that career anymore. And within that career, they try to maximize their earning potential, but also maximize their status as an expert, or or in a company as a hierarchy to reach a high. So I would think of a career in that sort of sense. But in the larger sense, your career is what you do in interacting with the outside world, as it were, with a society. So in that sense, yes, um, it's not motivated by necessarily the same, or I'm not striving to advance myself within the pigeon world in relation to other humans I'm not trying to compete with someone who's also doing pigeon rescue somewhere else. So in that sense, it's not the same. But yeah, it now forms the framework of how I relate to society. So if I write a book, it's going to be about pigeons. If I create a sanctuary. So that's interesting discussion. So yeah, maybe in the higher sense of a career, I would say yes, it qualifies. It's certainly the way I'm relating now to society.
To me, my humble opinion, in my opinion, I think you are an extremely successful rescuer of precious lives.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
thank you.
that's how I look at you. I
Yeah.
suppose it's very subjective, like what you said. Now, you have talked about your journey, what you've been doing, the kind of things you encounter for the past 1 hour. How does it make you feel talking about these things?
Well, I like to talk about the things that I'm interested in. I like to if people are also interested to hear it, that's very nice, because I do really want to raise awareness about pigeons. So I think that every discussion that we have about them is very precious. And everyone who, the next time someone walks on the street who has heard some, or even a small portion of a discussion about pigeons, they will start to notice them more. And that has a butterfly effect. And they will mention to someone else. And so that's how we stop them from being invisible. They become visible because of people talking about them. And so that's very precious. So I'm happy to do it. And I'm always happy to talk about pigeons. I'm always happy to talk about what I'm doing. And yeah, it's something I enjoy talking about. So yeah.
I enjoy listening to you, and I'm sure our viewers enjoy. Whoever's going to watch this in the future will also enjoy listening to what you have to say. It's so important, it's crucial. And before we close off,
Mhm.
what would you like to tell our viewers?
Well, I would like to wish them Happy New Year. I would like to thank them for listening. And if they have any questions or if they want to get in touch about anything, also if they have any questions about pigeons in their area, I'd love to follow up with them. If they want to stay in touch with what I'm going to do in the future, then they can also just let me know about that. And, I can always let them know how things develop, what new stuff happens in the future. Yeah, I think that I don't know where they all are, so I would actually be very curious to know where they are listening in from, and how I would also like to know how things are there for birds or pigeons specifically. So yeah, I'm interested to know because of course I don't see them here. So wherever you are, thanks for listening.
Okay, viewers, and whoever is going to watch this session subsequently after the live stream, you have heard Billie, and on behalf of all the pigeons in the world, we urge you to be more, or at least try to become more aware when
Yeah.
you walk around your city or wherever you stay, when you see the next pigeon. We hope, we trust you will have a more positive perspective when you look at the next pigeon. Every life is precious.
Yeah, I'd like
And
to make a book recommendation as well for
sure,
that they can find a book. It's called Pigeon Watching. It's very popular. So if they Google pigeon watching, they will find it. So that will also, if they get that book, that will also help them. Then they will start to watch pigeons. So exactly what you said, but it will complement what you're asking them to do.
yes, get the book. If you want to know anything about pigeons, you know how to get in touch with Billie because all her contact information is attached to the description of this post. And we urge you to help these precious lives, to help Billie in her noble work in whatever way you can, whenever you can, whatever way you can. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad we have kicked off 2024 on such a positive note in a very, very meaningful way that makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Mira. Thank you for giving some time for pigeons. So on behalf of pigeons, I want to thank you. And it was extremely nice to talk to you.
You're
And
very welcome, Billie. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was very inspiring. And I'm thinking what else I can do to help. Honestly, it's been really inspiring. And please keep up the amazing work. And thank you for being the voice of the voiceless.
oh, well, thank you so much for spending this time with me here. And we will stay in touch, of course. We will.
Of
We'll stay.
course, and viewers, I trust there will be many among you who will want to stay in touch as well. So please do. Until we meet again in the next session, thank you. Happy New Year. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.